Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Vikas Nangia with another episode of CyberWatch, a program through which you get to meet entrepreneurs, technocrats, and subject matter experts. Ladies and gentlemen, digital transformation brings great promise to our day-to-day life, but it also increases the cyber risks. Today on the program with our expert guests who've flown in all the way from Texas, both of them have flown in all the way from Texas, we will discuss on the topic Cyber for Legal, Legal for Cyber. My first guest on the program is Senior Attorney and Partner at Brackett & Ellis PC, Joe Cleveland. Joe has practiced in the area of commercial and intellectual property litigation for over 30 years. My second guest on the program is a very familiar guest, Lalit Ahluwalia, the founder and CEO of DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. Lalit and Joe, thank you so very much for joining us on TV Asia's CyberWatch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vikas.
Absolutely delighted to discuss. Many folks who have been now regular viewers of our program are concerned when they think of cyber security and law. So I want to open up the conversation with both of you, getting your thoughts on the topic, cyber for legal, legal for cyber.
Right. Well, thank you again for having me, and appreciate you inviting us to speak on this very exciting topic and emerging topic in the cybersecurity field. You mentioned legal aspects. Law firms are not immune from cyber attacks. In fact, there's a recent study by the American Bar Association in 2021 that suggested that there are 25% of the law firms in the United States that had suffered some sort of cyber security attack. And in the UK, it's even worse. The top 100 firms, there's about 75% of the top 100 firms in the UK have suffered some sort of cyber security attack or incident. And so law firms are not immune from cybersecurity issues. And the reason is that the law firms are the repository of a lot of information that criminals and others, state actors, want to have. They want to have access to client confidences, client secrets. A lot of law firms have trade secrets of their client in preparing patent applications. Those are generally trade secret information until the patent is actually granted by the United States government. So a lot of law firms have these repositories of very important information that the client would like to keep secret, and that's why the criminal elements and government entities look for these, what used to be softer targets, frankly, of the law firms. Right. And then the other thing that the law firms also have that is very important to the client, of client funds. A lot of funds go through law firms, particularly in closing deals, business deals or transactions. A lot of money flows through the trust accounts of law firms. So the criminal element is looking for ways in which they can capture trade secret information, client confidence information, and money.
Interesting. Lalit?
So I think Joe very well covered cyber for legal.
Right.
I'm going to talk about legal for cyber. There was a time in my professional life, I just said, why legal for cyber? That was my least favorite thing to do. Right. Especially when you have to really review all the massive contracts with service providers, with the clients. It used to be like a battle, uphill battle, like, hey, what can you not really get agreement on this simple clause? Fast forward today, my suggestion to everyone in the audience is do not take any shortcuts. Why? Because look at all the regulatory landscape today, how drastic it's really become. SEC regulations, right? The financial obligations coming, not to say about like the IP theft and the entrepreneurship. Like there's a lot of legal battles that get fought, and I can assure you, legal is going to be your best friend. Like when it really comes to, and when I mean like legal for cyber, I really mean looking at everything which you are liable for, both regulatory-wise, but also your obligations to either end consumers or the other service providers.
So in either or scenario, let's talk about the responsibility and obligations. Joe, what would you say?
We're really actually in the same business. Cybersecurity in the legal field is actually in the same, we're a service business. We're providing services to our customers and to our clients. And in both cases, we're trying to minimize risk. Risk of loss of reputation, risk of loss to business, to revenue. And so we do all these different things to minimize that risk. From Lalit's side, he tries to minimize the risk of intrusion into the computer networks of the company and destruction of evidence or stealing of evidence. Right. From the legal standpoint, we try to minimize the loss to a business for any sort of that type of intrusion. So there's all different kind of mitigation ways that the law firm lawyers can help businesses to reduce that risk. For example, one of which is to make sure that it's in compliant with all regulatory and legal requirements across the United States. So there's a patchwork of laws throughout the United States, both federal and state laws, that require reporting of cyber attack instances. There's a plethora of penalties that can be imposed on businesses if they do not comply with the regulations on maintaining, and this is particular for publicly traded companies, for maintaining strict compliance with cyber standards in the industry.
Right.
And then also the insurance aspect, to minimize the risk of losing a significant amount of business, or at least mitigating losses. The insurance is available to businesses to purchase to help mitigate that risk.
Lalit.
I think Joe summarized really well. I will probably make it even more relevant to the audience here. Take a simple example of cyber insurance.
Right. Right.
There's not an organization or a business that is immune to cyber attacks. As we time and often again said, that it's not about the question of if, is when the cyber attack is going to happen, which means you're going to have to fight like a lot of the things around the breaches.
Right.
And very often you end up fighting battles with even cyber insurance on the cyber insurance side. Oh, this was not a breach, or I am liable for this, because many companies have signed up for cyber insurance thinking if something like that happens, they're able to recoup some of the money back or the damages back. But there's a lot of cases where the cyber insurance companies will say, no, that was not part of the coverage.
Right.
And a lot of businesses actually suffer from that. And when it comes to small and medium businesses, which the audience should make, they often even don't come out of that at all. It means the businesses go bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And this is another classic example of the legal in the cyber, besides the other use cases where we have to make sure even the law firms can be attacked.
We're going to take a quick short break over here and resume our conversation with Lalit and Joe on the other side of the break. Stay tuned and keep watching CyberWatch. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching CyberWatch. Ladies and gentlemen, on the program today, we are discussing on the topic Cyber for Legal, Legal for Cyber, with our special guest, Lalit Ahluwalia and Joe Cleveland. Gentlemen, once again, welcome to CyberWatch.
Thank you.
So here, let's discuss about the case studies, as I was mentioning prior to the break, where the viewers can connect with our topic more closely. Joe, what would you say?
Sure. There's as I was mentioning before, law firms are not immune from cyber attacks and phishing instances. But we were recently involved in an investigation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, on a very, very sophisticated phishing situation involving it was not phishing towards the law firm. They were not trying to steal money from the law firm. They were using the law firm to park money that they stole from another company.
Right. So they were trying to secure some data from you folks.
No, they were trying to use our firm, use the firm that was involved in the situation as a repository for the money that they stole from another company.
Interesting.
And so what happened was they phished another company in another state, and were actually able to direct that money to a law firm, and park the money there until it was safe for them to and lied to the law firm and asked them to ship that money overseas after time.
So that's interesting. So this is not just cyber scam, but it's also misrepresentation, where somebody is trying to use your name. So I think there are two things involved over here. Lalit?
So I think what Joe is bringing up, and I want him to actually complete the story, the dynamics, is very important because it has very subtle elements of how people are getting trapped. Of course, phishing is a classic example and one of the common threats that anyone is facing today.
Right.
You get lured into doing certain actions, and this is where you got lured to really give away your credentials, which allowed the transaction to happen.
Right.
That is a social engineering aspect, which is a cyber and also a little bit of the legal, how this law firm got trapped into turning this money into a legal transaction.
Right, right.
Then the third element, which I think Joe will complete in story, is how this whole transaction gets legalized, but what countermeasures could have been taken to prevent that.
Right. So how this all got started was the criminal element contacted a mortgage company up in Wisconsin and were able to fish out from them the idea that they were going to transfer some money to another company in Colorado through a wire transfer.
Okay.
They were able to redirect that money by faking that they were a law firm representing the company in Colorado.
Wow.
And had them redirect that money to a law firm in Texas, who they'd been in communication with about doing another transaction, about collecting the money from another company in Texas. And they presented the law firm with a fake contract that was written up by a lawyer to suggest that there was some legal dispute with this company in Texas.
Wow.
And they needed help to settle this dispute with this company in Texas that had no idea that they were being used as a target either.
Wow.
And so they misdirected the money from Wisconsin that was supposed to go to Colorado, that went to a law firm in Texas that they were having communications with to make it seem like it was a payment on a debt from the other company in Texas. And then once they had the money in the law firm's bank account, they said, now send the money overseas to us. And it was a law firm's client at the time. They thought it was the client at the time, and they did what the law firm instructed them to do, was to send the money over to Dallas. And then when the FBI got involved, the FBI said, this is the most sophisticated phishing scam we've ever seen, because it had so many pieces and parts. They had fake documents. They had fake IDs. They phished a company in Wisconsin. They misdirected money to a law firm in Texas. They had the law firm believing they had a client overseas that was collecting money from another company in Texas that was not even existing. And so it was a very, very sophisticated situation that, and a lot of law firms, and this is what I tell to law firms, is that a lot of law firms do verify that they are actually getting a wire or sending out a wire from somebody that they are authorized to send it to. That is standard operating procedure in law firms, and a lot of companies too. They will get on the phone and actually verify that they're sending a wire to a company that they know that that's an actual company. What this firm didn't do, and which I think I would recommend all firms do, is make sure the incoming wire is coming from a entity that you know that they're supposed to be paying. And so had that law firm contacted that company up in Wisconsin, the whole house of cards would have fallen.
You mentioned about the wire transfer. Now the bank also gets involved in a situation like this. What are the implications for the bank over here, Lalit?
See, there
are hardly any, because they are just doing the routine job of just doing the wire transfer.
See, and this is where so think bank as more transactory body in this whole mix, right? As long as they provided a secure communications methods and nobody infiltrated those methods, they're fine.
As long as they're doing an end-to-end service, for them it's not to verify where the payment and what for it is going. So they are not involved in any kind of litigation.
I would say, see, this is where things become tricky. There are scenarios where banks do have a little liability or a responsibility rather. Like whether these transactions are originating from the places where they should not originate from, no matter what kind of transaction, legal or not. There's some parameters they watch for. Just like how you will say, oh, your card is being used in some place XYZ.
Right.
Because they can have those ways to kind of track those things down.
Yeah.
But the scenario we're talking about, the sophistication of the attacks, everything looks legit on the transaction
on the surface,
paperwork, right? But what you're not really doing is connecting the dots together. Individually, the transaction looking but when you put together in the whole schema, that does not look legit.
And that's a very important point, is that when people are dealing with money, particularly wiring money overseas or wiring money to different companies, they need to connect the dots. They need to verify at every single point that there is not a problem. And for example, in this case, when you look back at this case, you can see there's evidence of something. If somebody really paid attention, there's evidence of fraud. Because, for example, the law firm was receiving emails from the company that they thought they were collecting the money from, but the email account was one letter off. One letter off of the real name of the company. And they created
if they bypass it, doing a close check on that, things can go away. Now this is more interesting, what you were talking about, wire transfer, Lalit. Another company, I'd take the name Zelle over here. When people do money transfer, they clearly give a disclaimer that we are not responsible about the money that you're transferring to whosoever. So obviously the consumers have to be very, very diligent, and that's why people prefer sending small amounts and then they transfer the larger amounts. Any suggestions for, as a cybersecurity expert to our viewers who do frequently, make payments, receive payments through platforms such as Zelle?
Well, simple methods, like number one, whenever the transaction happens or any transaction of certain amounts, have limits defined. Because sometimes the transaction could be issued by you or somebody taking control of your account do that, right?
Right.
Now, the scenario where you are yourself doing the transaction, make sure you're validating the accounts and stuff, and there's a number of ways you can validate, like who you're sending to. You often want to check the address to map it to this address, as Joe said, sometimes depending on the kind of transaction you're going to do, you might want to have physical validations too.
Yeah.
Prior.
Yeah.
Not just the online or just phone-based transactions only. So those kind of common cyber hygienic practices, I think you can easily follow.
So it's time for us to take another short break over here, but on the other side of the break, as we come back, viewers, first we'll take a quick look at the CyberWatch News Flash. We'll be right back after these messages. Lalit and Joe, thank you so very much for joining us. Viewers, today with our guests on the program, we're talking on the topic Cyber for Legal, Legal for Cyber. And before we continue and resume our conversation, let's take a quick look at the CyberWatch News Flash. Cybersecurity researchers at ESET have uncovered an active Android malware campaign dubbed Exotic Visit that has been primarily targeting users in South Asia, particularly those in India and Pakistan. The campaign, ongoing since November 2021, is orchestrated by a previously unknown threat group tracked as virtual invaders. The malicious operation relies on distributing malware through dedicated websites and the Google Play Store, disguising itself as legitimate messaging apps, SIM information tools, and even a food ordering service and a hospital app. These fake but functional apps provide cover for delivering the open source exploit spy remote access Trojan to unsuspecting victims. According to ESET's report, the apps have been designed to gather a wide range of sensitive data from infected devices, including GPS locations, microphone recordings, contacts, SMS messages, call logs, clipboard content, and even notification details from popular messaging apps like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Gmail. Additionally, the malware can download and upload files, view installed apps, and execute commands received from its command and control server. I want to bring to the attention of our viewers that CyberWatch is powered, and this news segment is powered by DigitalXForce and iTrustXForce. So continuing with our conversation, with our topic, and as I mentioned about the data breach part of Target, so that falls in, very much in sync with our topic today. Joe, what would you say? How does a law firm protect the private companies, when there is a data breach? And, also moving it forward from private companies to the consumers?
Sure. So one of the first things I think a law firm wants to do is understand the scope of the problem and how big the breach is and what all is going on and how much it's going to cost to fix.
Right.
And once you look at the cost to fix equation, then you're looking at what available sources of funding can help fix this problem. One of the ones that we talked about earlier is insurance.
Right.
Insurance is one thing that a lawyer would immediately look at to see what insurance coverage is allowed under the commercial general liability policy or some endorsement dealing with a cybersecurity attack. They want to know if that is excluded from the policy or is that coverage that's allowed, that they can put their insurance carrier on notice that they've had this cyber incident and they need help to mitigate the loss, try to reduce the amount of damage that's occurred as a result of the disclosure of private information, for example, or reduce the disclosure or reduce the incident involved and get the insurance involved to try to mitigate the financial loss to the company as well. There may be some other third parties that maybe that the company could look at. For example, if they hired an outside, and I'm not trying to denigrate your profession here, but they've hired an outside cybersecurity firm that may not be the greatest in the world, that they came in and did not bring their company up to standards, there may be some indemnity provisions in the cybersecurity firm's contract that allows the company to seek recompense from the cybersecurity firm to help them deal with this problem. And so there may be the cybersecurity firm may have some insurance as well. So that may want to look at that to see if there's so other insurance companies could be involved to try to, again, marshal the forces to deal with the problem that's at issue. The other thing that's come forward in recent years is the notification requirements. If it's a publicly traded company, there's regulatory rules that require notification within a very swift period of time for companies in the United States, and there are other laws throughout the country, throughout the world, that allows notification of a cybersecurity incident. In the United States, it has to be a material breach. And that's a phrase of debate, but so that's some other things that from a law firm perspective they would look at. See the size of the scope of the problem, marshal the resources to address the problem, and then try to notify the government authorities about what happened.
Yeah. Also, it gives me a sense that the law firms have to have some very smart cybersecurity lawyers as well, who are proficient in this area, who can really trace and diagnose it well where the problems are, right?
Oh, absolutely. It goes hand in hand.
I mean, they might hire a cybersecurity firm, but at the same time, if they have someone who's trained in that area of expertise, I think that'll make a lot of difference.
Right. Well, so think of this way, right? When the legal for the commercial real estates and stuff came in, it was not just left to the legal. They wanted like real estate experts on the team as SMEs. Same thing on the cyber now. More and more digital and the breaches happening, while of course the companies are trying to bring up and recover from the damages, restore their services.
Right.
One of the big implications that Joe was talking about is the legal obligations they have to, regulatory obligations they have to really comply with, whether it's the notifications, whether it's really getting, and pay hefty fines, the breach clauses. And most of the companies rely on the cyber insurance and other mechanisms to really recoup some of that. Or hey, where can I really find if there was a foul done by some other, third party or my service provider. All those things really come. But you cannot just enforce it on the surface of what I think.
Yeah.
There's all that legal language that's put in the contracts to really paperwork that's done. And that's not what the cyber experts or even the company or the business people know. They need legal help. And for legal to really fully understand what that really means and how to apply, they will understand what the clause is, but where it's applicable, to what extent it's applicable, they need that cyber expertise.
And I think Lalit raises a very good point, is that the cyber and the legal don't need to be opposed to each other, they need to be connected.
Correct.
They need to help the client understand the risk, minimize the risk, and provide the transparency that the government wants, and the investors want, and the public wants about these cybersecurity instances. So the legal and the cybersecurity experts can help companies understand and minimize those risks.
Yeah, when we talk about the new growth and the development in this area, as we have the financial audits, for the private companies, I'm sure there are to mitigate the situations or to understand the depth of any case. Do you guys have frequently some security audits as well, and what really is the purpose of that?
We don't have government mandated security audits. It's just primarily publicly traded companies that may require those security audits to be able to put that before the regulatory agencies. But I'll say this, that when a company or law firm purchases insurance for cybersecurity insurance, the insurance companies are requiring those audits. They want to make sure if they're going to insure a business or a law firm or anybody else.
So you advise the insurance companies that to go for the security audits.
Right.
Lalit?
Yeah, no, I just said, it's not so much about that law firms are required to, of course, as the things will evolve and the law firms become another sector where I can go and take the sensitive data out, I'm pretty sure there are going to be regulations there too. It doesn't matter whether it's a private or public law firm, right? Yeah. But I will emphasize again, some of the common applications for the audience. Cyber insurance, if you're thinking about cyber insurance, you cannot be thinking about without cyber or without legal expertise in the room.
Right.
Period. As simple as that. You better have reviewed those contracts for cyber insurance and cyber insurance companies as well. If you have those expertise missing and you're just writing policies without understanding, you're again missing a big piece.
Right.
That's bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway from today's conversation, of course, is that cybersecurity and law, they're both hand in hand. They both have to work parallelly, and they need to be supporting each other, and the experts need to do the same.
Right.
But as closing remarks, what would you say to our viewers who are watching this program across North America?
Well, I'd say cyber crime, cybersecurity is an emerging and problematic thing that businesses across the world are dealing with on an everyday basis. And they need a good team of cybersecurity experts and legal experts to help them navigate those risks and get them to a place where they can have a safe harbor and hopefully not have these problems.
Yeah. And I would like, maybe say call for action. If anything you want to take away, do two things today, especially for the folks running their small businesses or businesses of any kind and everything. Number one, look at all the contracts that you really have put in place and review that with some kind of legal advisory and stuff in mind and look for the cyber clauses. Number two, if your businesses do have cyber insurance, please take another look, because the day you fall victim, you don't want to be like victim of, oh, cyber insurance can cover this and cannot cover that.
Right.
Make sure you review that, and that'll be like takeaway from at least this episode.
So Lalit and Joe, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our viewers. And I would encourage all of you watching this program at home, if you have any questions related to cybersecurity, write us at cyberwatch@tvasiausa.com. And if you want to reach out to Lalit Ahluwalia directly, Lalit, what's the best way out?
Well, through our websites, DigitalXForce.com or iTrustXForce.com, or you can also contact through our social media pages, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter. We're always available.
Great, thank you so very much. Well, this brings us to the end of today's episode of CyberWatch. Until next time, this is Vikas Nangia signing off. Thank you for watching.